Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child, brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by EMDR therapist Kellie Boyle to discuss brain-based therapies like EMDR and Brainspotting to help students think more clearly. Hi, Kellie. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Yes, we're very excited for you to be here. I know very little about EMDR and brain spotting. And so I think this is going to be something, especially from, like what we've talked about in the past, that people are going to be super interested in. And I feel like people might find a new therapy that's going to help their kid. So we're happy
Yeah,
that you're here.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Spread the word.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with an introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am a LPC, licensed professional counselor, aka mental health therapist. And I've been working in the mental health field for, gosh, probably 16 years now. Some of that was in community mental health, and I've been in private practice for the last 10 years. And I recently just opened up my own private practice in January. So it's been an exciting year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I work with, I work with teens, kids, adults. A lot of what I see is anxiety related stuff. I do see a lot of kids with ADHD or other learning difficulties, a lot of parenting stuff too. So yeah, that's in a nutshell a lot of what I do. Mental health therapy. I've seen, I don't know, so many different challenges and just life transition stuff, depression,
Yeah.
grief and loss, you name it. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, you're doing fabulous work, something that I think a lot of us, especially after the pandemic, have needed, or people
yes,
have realized they needed and got over the stigma and gone to seek, services from someone like you.
sure.
So if people were looking to find you, congrats on the new practice, by the way,
Thank you.
where would they go? Would they maybe give us where we'd find you online and then also in the world?
Yeah, so I actually work in Purcellville, Virginia, which is Western Loudoun County, for those that might not know where that is. So I have an office. Most of my clients come in person, but I also can do telehealth anywhere in the state of Virginia. So if you're located in Virginia, or even if you just drive across the border for your session, and that counts as the state of Virginia.
Right.
My website is www.reprocesstherapy.com. If you Google my name, you'll probably get my Psychology Today profile. You can contact me through that. I also have an Instagram and Facebook. My handle there is just Reprocess Therapy as well. So you can find me on there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will
Yeah.
link those things in the show notes so that folks can very easily find you.
Okay. Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, let's hop into these questions here. So
Yeah.
let's start with like EMDR therapy, just the basics.
Yeah.
How would you describe that to someone who's never heard of it? And like, what does it stand
Sure.
for?
Yeah, sure. That's a common question. So EMDR, so eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I know it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm going to give you some analogies first of kind of how it is. It's very um, it's a lot of information, so I'm going to start with analogies first. So
Sure.
my two favorite analogies. One actually came from a client of mine. I was working with a kid, and I was trying to simply explain it to him, and he kind of looks at me and goes, "Oh, so it's like a software update for your brain." And I was like, "Yes,
Oh my
exactly. That's
gosh.
the perfect way to describe it. It's like you're updating your brain, you're getting rid of what's not helpful, what's not useful anymore, and you're, adapting and keeping what is helpful."
Wow.
So that is one way to describe it.
Yeah.
The other way that I like to describe it is basically like, you're going on a time travel machine through different events in your life, and you're kind of
Okay.
reprocessing them. So certain events that have happened to us that have affected the way that we, our beliefs about ourselves or beliefs about
Mm,
the world. We're going back in and kind of reprocessing them so that we can think about them in a more helpful way and
right.
desensitize some of the feelings, thoughts, beliefs, images, body sensations that are attached to those events.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the way that we do that is, I think a lot of times people think it's more about the event than it is anything, but it's really about the negative belief that was formed because of an event. And so when I talk about an event, I know the word trauma right now is, a lot of people have a lot to say about, it being overused. And
Right.
I think my take on that is like, yes, maybe it is being overused, but everybody's had trauma. So whether it's
Sure.
something very minute, more single incident traumas or complex, trauma is any event that has taken place in our life or even an event that didn't take place. So if, something didn't happen in your childhood that should have happened, that is
Mm,
also a traumatic event. So anything that has affected, our beliefs about ourselves can be considered a traumatic event. So
right.
again, it's like, we tend to think about traumas as witnessing violence or, experiencing abuse ourselves or a car accident or a natural disaster or, something like that. But it really could be something like somebody who has bad acne and is getting made fun of at school. That
Mm,
can be a trauma. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain that a little bit. So how we are doing this is we are using bilateral stimulation, so right left brain movements. A lot of
mm,
therapists will do eye movements, like the hand movements back and forth, so the client is watching our with their eyes, going back and forth. And so, why they believe that's so effective is because it mimics REM sleep. So at
oh,
night, yeah, so at night when we're sleeping, REM sleep takes place, and that's when a lot of our processing emotions and memory storage and learning is taking place. And so,
right.
by us being able to do this while the client is awake, we can target like specific memories,
Right.
specific beliefs, specific feelings, and that's why we can kind of pinpoint exactly what it is that we need to reprocess. And so the bilateral stimulation helps kind of, it's kind of like it's opening up this portal to the brain that cannot be accessed through like traditional talk therapy or CBT or some of the, like I said, more of the traditional talk therapies. And so
Right.
EMDR is able to kind of get into that part of the brain and unfile these memories. And so we're kind of like they're up here again, and now we're reprocessing them again, and we're reprocessing them in a way where the thoughts and beliefs and images and everything that's associated with that memory is desensitized. And the bilateral stimulation is also weeding out. So we're kind of like eliminating those negative neural pathways that have formed, throughout the years because of this event or non-event. So basically it's weeding out all the negative noise, the negative neural pathways, and leaving only what's helpful for you.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Therapy. When I got trained in this, I was like, this is all I want to do. Like, this is amazing. I like, what have I been doing this whole time?
Right.
And I know that was like a mouthful, and there's so many more things that I could say about it, but
Of course. Right.
the software update is probably the easiest way to wrap that up concisely. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. It sounds very powerful. And when you mentioned the sleep portion of things, right? Like you said, the crossing the hemispheres of the brain and mimicking REM sleep, it seems like such an easy thing to be like, "Oh yeah, like why wouldn't you try to mimic the time that your brain goes through all of like processes like you said all of the emotions and things that have gone on in the day in past weeks, months, years." Um it seems so like intuitive to think of doing that, but I've literally never heard of this therapy before. So
Yeah.
like
Right.
what cool work you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The founder of EMDR. So EMDR was discovered in like the late 80s. So it's
Okay.
still considered like a new therapy.
Right.
But the founder, I guess she was out in New York City at Central Park. She was bird watching, and I guess she was thinking of something distressing. And she was, watching birds go back and forth, and she had noticed that during that time, what she was thinking of became less distressing. And she was a therapist, so she started experimenting. And so that's kind of how it all came about. And I think for many years it was mainly associated with, using it with like combat vets
Mm,
or, people with more complex trauma. But
right.
now we know it can be useful for so many different things.
Yeah. And you had said before, like, a kid that maybe gets bullied because of like acne or let's say like a learning difference. And I think, you said you see kids with learning differences, ADHD, anxiety, things of that nature. So
Mhm.
how does EMDR actually help reduce that negative noise that students might carry about themselves with having learning difference and feeling different?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said earlier, like we all have something. So, like, we know now, like, that, the brain is fascinating, and we know now that, like, kids can have like pre-verbal trauma. Like, even the birthing experience in general is traumatic. And so I think a lot of times people are like, well, they're not going to remember that. Or, but no, yes, the body does remember that, even though you don't
Right.
have the ability to vocalize. That was terrifying.
Right.
It's still stored in your body. And so yes, so somebody with a learning difference, low self-esteem, ADHD, again, everybody at some point there is a seed planted in us. And so, say for instance, a kid with ADHD at a young age, there was a seed planted somewhere that's in his brain that made him feel like I'm not capable, or I'm not good
Mm,
enough, or I'm a disappointment. My mom is always telling me to do this, but I can't do it. Or all my friends are able to do it this way, but I can't. And so that seed is planted at a young age, and then over time it's watered and watered and watered, because all these events that kind of convey that message, continue to happen over time. And so that's how the negative neural pathway is actually created. So what we see with, kids that I've worked with is that, yes, there's a lot of kids with learning differences have anxiety, because there is a lot of, that awareness of, am I going to be able to do this, or am I going to be able to handle this? And so
right.
what you see is that they have these beliefs of, I'm too overwhelmed, I can't handle this, I can't do this, I'm a disappointment, I don't know how to do it the right way. And so by using the EMDR, it doesn't change the fact that, the work might still be hard, or that, the work is still a lot and it feels overwhelming, but the attitude and the belief starts to change to, okay, I can handle this and I am capable of this. Like, I know now this is how I need to break it up now and do it in, 20 minutes at a time. Or I am capable. Or, if it's like a social related issue where they feel like they don't fit in, the thought starts to go from, I'm not good enough, to, realizing like, well, that's more their problem. Like, I can't control like how they react. And then they start
Right.
to, again, with the adaptive information processing that we have going on, with the ability to eliminate some of this negative noise, our brain works automatically to help us survive. So our adaptive information processing will kick in and say, oh, well, yeah, that there was a couple times that this kid was not very nice to me or made me feel left out. But then our brain also is recognizing like all these other times that they did feel included, or they did feel like they were good enough. And so that comes to
Right.
the forefront. And the other stuff, the negative stuff, is more of like, it's more distant, or it's just not as bothersome to them as it once was, after doing the EMDR. So yeah, I mean, I just think overall it's helps with more clear, more organized. Like, I've had clients say to me, I just feel like can think more organized. I'm more organized now. Like, I feel like my brain is now filed and like completely organized, and there's not
Mm,
just all this jumble and, you know, stress and frustration. And
yeah.
so yeah, I just think overall it helps with clear thinking, and, the capability and belief that, that they can handle hard things, or they can handle stressful situations, or yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that sounds amazing. I feel like a lot of kids, especially who have a learning difference, do carry around that belief of they're not smart enough to do or they cannot do something. And sometimes,
Mhm.
like, that's half the battle of being able to do the thing is the fact that you think you can't, when in reality you can. So, like, I can imagine this therapy being so incredibly helpful to those kids in like we do reading therapy. So like someone comes to us for reading therapy, and once they've, got this stuff done, they realize I can do this, and they build the confidence, and things become clearer and easier to them.
Yeah.
But I feel like even this being like a co-treating situation, right, with EMDR therapy and reading, you
Mhm.
could even probably get there even a little faster, having that built-in
Sure.
confidence already of
Sure. Yeah, because you don't have
having the
the
belief.
overwhelming stress and worries of, yeah, those limiting beliefs or the worries of who's gonna make fun of me or who's gonna
Right.
be disappointed in me when I can't get it right the first time. And it's just like
Right.
so much of that can weigh us down.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. So who is it that you would say benefits the most from EMDR or brain spotting? Like are there certain signs or patterns that tell you like these methods are going to be a really good fit for this person?
Yeah. I mean, so I've been doing therapy for years now. I all of my clients, for the most part, I'll do some EMDR with. Some of them maybe more so than others, but I mean, it's really cool because I mean, honestly, I believe that you can take pretty much anything, any challenge that you're facing, and utilize EMDR with. So
Yeah.
I did a training recently with, and we'll talk about the brain spotting in a little bit, but
Yeah.
um, with David Grand, who was the founder of Brain Spotting, and his way of like thinking about therapy and who's a good candidate. I mean, he was brilliant. He just kind of like blew my mind with the way that, and the way that he kind of challenged like our Western norms of traditional therapy, and you got to do it this way, or you got to be it's got to be a
Right.
certain way. But he really made me think a lot about anybody is a candidate for therapy if they are able to show up to your door and they're present and they want to get better, then they're a candidate. So of course you have to consider situations with maybe certain medical conditions to get cleared with their doctor. So like with the EMDR, you can do the eye movements, but you can also do like tapping, or you can even do an auditory stimulation where they put headphones on and they
Yeah.
listen to like, in both ears. You can use buzzers that buzz like right and left, back and forth. So you don't necessarily have to do the eye movements because I know, it's a concern with people who have like seizure disorders or
Right.
epilepsy. I have worked with somebody that had epilepsy, and we did do the eye movements, and it was okay, but definitely proceed with caution with cases like that, or
Of course.
somebody who is actively suicidal. Probably not a good idea to do any of that before getting them in a better, more stabilized place.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I really do think it can help with so many issues. Sometimes people come in specifically for anxiety, or self-esteem, or something like that. But even if it's like, we've been having these stomach cramps and headaches for months, and we've been to all these doctors and we can't figure out what it is. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe it's stress related. And so we can take,
Right.
I can start with just like a stomach ache. And then, we have this method of kind of figuring out how to tie it to a specific feeling or memory. And then that's kind of like our starting point for EMDR.
Right.
Because some people will be like, well, I don't have like a specific event or memory that I need to reprocess. But there are ways that you can still kind of bring it back to like a certain feeling, or like I said, that there's pre-verbal trauma. So there's just different ways that we can kind of tie it back and help hopefully alleviate some of those symptoms that they're experiencing.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Like the way that something manifests physically can also be worked through in EMDR.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So like it's like the mind, what's in the mind is in the body, what's in the body is in the mind. So they're connected. And so that's why it can be effective, for somatic
Wow.
symptoms.
Huh. So interesting.
Yeah.
So once you've done EMDR with, like, let's say a student or, I mean, an adult as well, what kind of
Mhm.
changes do you start to notice? Like maybe emotionally or academically, if we're talking about a school aged kid, or even in how kids like maybe solve problems, like we were talking about, maybe like bullying or anything of that nature.
Yeah. So I mean it's everyone's different, of course. Kids have, because they're younger, they have fewer negative neural pathways to clear. So
Okay.
oftentimes with kids, we'll pick like a specific target and that day, and like by the end of the session that day, um, it will already be cleared. Or we use a system called SUDS, so subject unit distress. So we measure the disturbance, distress. I like to kind of use activation as the word.
Mm.
So we asked them on a scale of 0 to 10, how stressful is it when you think about this right now? And so, the goal obviously is to get it to a 0.
Right.
And then we install like a positive belief. So that's a big part of it too. We desensitize the event and feelings, thoughts, sensations, emotions that go with it. And then once we get that down to a 0, we start the installation of the positive belief. So instead
Okay.
of like, if their negative belief is just like, I can't do this, then, their negative belief is I can't do this, then their positive belief could be something like I am capable. And so we start to pair that with whatever particular event we're focused on. So yes, we can. Oftentimes, I can see the change happening like in session. Like,
Wow.
so they'll start saying like things like, "Oh, well, actually, it wasn't really that bad," or "Actually, I know I can do this because my mom will sit down and help me do it." Or it's just like all of these rational thoughts are coming to the forefront of their mind, and
Right.
they're realizing like, okay, like that capability or that ability is there.
Wow.
Um, and then obviously, like I said, some people are different. So if it's something that's more complex, it might be more of like a gradual response to it. So over time of doing EMDR, we'll start to see that like the symptoms are changing.
Mm.
And then every time they come back in after an EMDR session, we do what's called a reevaluation. So
Okay.
we kind of just check in on, what were the symptoms and challenges that you came in here in the first place, and then we kind of
Right.
assess like, are they better, worse, the same? And especially with children, I send the parents like a little checklist form of things for them to just be aware and notice throughout the week, so that they're kind of looking for different changes and insights too. Because obviously the parents' feedback is very helpful in
Right.
this as well, like things that they start to notice.
Yeah.
Um, so like emotionally, I would say, I'm noticing that they're maybe not perseverating on certain thoughts like they used to. There's less constant thoughts and worries, less crying or intense emotions. Just I think in general, their reactions are less intense. They're feeling more capable or just less bothered in general. Sometimes like if sleep is an issue, then it could be changing their sleep. Like sleep is better, and they're not waking up with nightmares all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and academically, I think it's just they're just feeling better equipped and better able to handle whatever it is that's coming their
Right.
way. If it's like a huge load of homework or just trying to understand how to access, like nowadays, it's like kids have to understand, like have to go to different websites and different apps to
Yeah.
get through stuff, and so that's so overwhelming. And so yeah, just again, like the thought of like, okay, it's still hard, it's still confusing, but like I can do this. Or, like again, like I have, my dad will sit down with me while I do this. So I have that resource there. Or,
Right.
sometimes I just have to take a deep breath or take a pause when I get overwhelmed and then come back to it 10 minutes or whatever. So
Right.
all of these ideas and the problem solving starts happening, and it's really a beautiful thing to see, that
Yeah.
these resources are already in them.
Right.
Yeah.
How helpful. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, as a kid, really having an understanding of knowing, like, these things are, like you said, these resources are within you. You just have to know, like, how to tap into them.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's awesome.
we do a lot of resourcing too. Or I do a lot of resourcing too with my clients. So we do a lot of practicing emotion regulation skills or
Okay.
grounding skills, pendulation, skills. And so we practice like with real life events before we start like actual processing. So I'll have them practice in session, and kind of go through, rehearse in your head or kind of visualize these things. And then we kind of just kind of talk about like the shifts they notice or the differences that they see when utilizing these, specific coping strategies. And so I give them some practice. That's a kind of one of the things I like remind them if they're okay with me, communicating to the parents. I tell the parents, these are the strategies we're working on. If you can kind of do them together or help them with them, so that's a big piece of this therapy as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the brain spotting that you recently mentioned. So you've been
Sure.
trained in that.
Yeah.
So what is it? And then how does it also like compare, complement, relate to EMDR?
Yeah. So it's similar to EMDR is that in that it's like through the eyes. And so the whole idea again, it's like you're able to access like there's like a part of the brain that you wouldn't normally. So the whole idea behind brain spotting, and so the founder of brain spotting, he was one of the earlier people that started with EMDR. And so through his EMDR work, he noticed that some of his clients' eyes would just freeze, or like get stuck at a certain point. So he started to experiment with that. And so he discovered brain spotting that they're depending on where you look affects how you feel. So his whole thing is if we can find a spot, he uses like a pointer. So if we can find that activation spot, whether it's like eye level, up, down, then that will give us access to this part of our brain that's the trauma, is stored and allows it to kind of come out again and be reprocessed in a more helpful way. So yeah, a lot of it is about where you look affects how you feel. And so he does different experiments with, okay, think about a distressing memory or something that's bothering you, if it's just something in day to day, and then he'll have you like look at, to the left, and then look to the right, and then look up. And so you're kind of noticing like how you feel differently depending on where you look.
That's
Also,
crazy.
also very fascinating. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's funny because brain spotting sounds like really scary. Like it sounds like
Yeah.
if you don't know what it means, it sounds bizarre.
Yeah.
But that is really cool. So you're saying with the brain spotting, do you find a spot that is the most distressing and try to desensitize it there? Or are you just like,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, it's similar to EMDR, but with it's a lot less guided than EMDR. Like I feel
Oh,
like EMDR, it's much more like the therapist is kind of guiding it, and there's more interaction going on, and
right.
brain spotting is much more organic. It's like once you find that brain spot, it's just like you are attuned, and it's a lot of mindful resourcing or mindful processing on the client's part. And so they're just
Gotcha.
staring at this spot, allowing their brain to kind of free associate, go where it needs to go, and just continuing to just kind of like report or communicate to the therapist like what they're noticing. And then it just goes on and on and on until they, either time's up, or they feel like they've reached a point where they're good for that day at
Hmm.
least. But again, it's the activation level, and with the EMDR too. You are supposed to be activated, because if you're not activated when you're thinking about these things, then it's probably not that distressing to you. So,
Right.
the activation level goes up, usually higher than, it goes up before it comes down. And so,
Right.
um, I wouldn't say it's a comfortable, easy therapy, but it's
Right.
effective because
Right.
you're bringing up things that you don't want to think about. And because people tend to avoid the things and not think about. So, I think with EMDR as well, but with brain spotting, it's, this specific portal to the brain is helping to break down those dissociative barriers, because I think our brains just naturally dissociate or try, avoid thinking about these things that cause activation. And so
Right.
again, with a therapist, you're there. Hopefully you trust the therapist and their expertise, and the therapist is attuned to you. They're going through these thoughts, memories, feelings with you. It's hopefully
Right.
feels safe. And so it's kind of why it's so effective. So yeah.
Wow. That is That is crazy cool. Like, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting way to think about, going through therapy.
Yeah.
So once you like you're trained in both of these things. So how is it that you would decide which approach to use? Like, do you use the EMDR? Do you use brain spotting? And what might one of those sessions like look like? You can do EMDR
Yeah.
or brain spotting or both.
I would say like clients that, because I've been doing EMDR for a couple of years now. So I would say like clients that respond well to EMDR, I probably just continue to do EMDR with them unless there's a reason that we need to try something different.
Mhm.
I think brain spotting is probably going to be helpful for those people that either have more complex trauma, or maybe they didn't quite get the results they wanted from EMDR. Like maybe it helped a little bit, but not to the full extent that we were hoping it would help. And
Right.
so, yeah, I would probably use brain spotting with them. I think with kids, though, because they have fewer negative neural pathways to clear, EMDR is going to be pretty effective. And
Right.
again, like if it's a more complex trauma case, then brain spotting, I'm sure would also be effective. But so far, yeah, I think the EMDR has been really successful. The
Yeah.
kids, yeah,
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah.
And what does the therapy session look like? We've like talked kind of about it, but what is
Oh
that?
yeah.
What happens?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so basically we pick a target, like what is it that you want to work on today? Whether it's like a specific memory or a thought or just a feeling. And we kind of just go from there. So we create, like with EMDR, we create, we have to tie it to a negative belief and a positive belief. And then, after, of course, like this is all after like history taking and the resourcing and like the practicing of emotion regulation skills and all that stuff has taken place. Then we start the processing. So like we're processing the actual target, and we're starting with the eye movements or the tapping or the buzzers. With kids, actually, you can do the bilateral stimulation just by like withdrawing. So I have like this method that I use with kids sometimes if they would rather draw rather than like, and I put the buzzers in their shoes so they're free, their hands are free
Oh,
to do the drawing while they're processing, and then the buzzers are either going in their shoes or like under their thighs or something. You can put them there,
right.
um, or in their pockets. And so yeah, we do like a set of maybe, I don't know, for like 20 seconds. And then I'll say, okay, what are you noticing now? So like they'll go back into, whatever the target is every 20 seconds, depending on how there's different ways you can do it. But, and then I'm just kind of asking them, like, what are they noticing? So they can report anything they want. They can say, I'm noticing that my chest is tighter, or I'm noticing that I'm feeling really sad, or I'm noticing like there's a specific memory that popped up or a specific image that popped up. And then we just
Mhm.
continue to like focus. Like a lot of times I'll say like, okay, just continue to follow that or go with that. And so they're just, our brain takes it where it needs to go. So sometimes people will start with like a specific memory, but the brain will jump to like something completely different. But you have to
Mhm.
trust that the brain knows what it needs to do. So I'm much more of a natural standard protocol when it comes to EMDR, because I believe that just let the brain go where it needs to go. There's other protocols with EMDR where you're bringing it back every time to the original target.
Mm.
But and there's different reasons that you use different ones. But yeah, a lot of the session is them either using the bilateral stimulation, and then I'm checking back with them, every 20, 30 seconds and asking them, what do they notice? And then every so often I'm asking them, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how stressful does it feel to you now still? Or how activated do you feel? And then obviously the goal is to get it to a 0. If we don't get it to a 0 by the end of the session, we'll just do some regulation, grounding skills to bring them back, to send them back to, if they have to go back to school or go back to work or,
Sure.
whatever it is. And then we kind of pick up, the next session. We'll talk about like what insights they have. So a lot of times, so this is another cool thing is that after brain spotting and EMDR, your brain is still processing even after you leave session. So it can still be
Right.
processing for like weeks on end, which is really
Wow.
cool. Yeah, which is really, really cool. And so some people won't really notice a lot of differences at first, but other people will come back and be like, oh, wow, I had this crazy dream, or I had this memory pop up that I haven't thought about in years. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's always interesting to see how their week went after a
Yeah.
session of EMDR and how they handle things differently. And obviously for kids, it's exciting to hear from them and their parents, like, what differences they've noticed. So
That's really cool.
yeah,
It seems, how do I describe this? It sounds both very active, but also very inactive in the sense where, like, you're doing a lot of hard work in, like, allowing your body and brain to just feel through things that are very stressful.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably a really good way to describe it. It is very inactive. It's a lot of it is like you're trusting your brain to do what it needs to do. You're allowing your
Right.
brain to go where it needs to go. Like I said earlier, we have so many fences set up naturally to
Yeah.
protect us because we can't be doing this in the middle of the day when we're supposed to
No.
be at schools, focused or whatever. And so, yeah, a lot of it is trusting the process, trusting the therapist, and just allowing your brain to go and feel what it needs to feel, think what it needs to think. So,
Right. Wow. That's wild.
yeah, I mean, it's incredible that our brains are set up to heal too,
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I think, like, my husband and I have, like, talked about this before. We like to watch sports, and there are times when you see an injury that you're like, "I can't believe that in just a few weeks' time, your body will have healed that injury." Like, it knows what to do if you've set it appropriately, like, it can
Mhm.
do the work to
Yeah.
get you back to where you need to be, and the brain
Yeah.
is part of the body, and so it's like you
Yeah.
said, it's wild that our brains are able to
Yeah.
actually heal us.
Yeah. It just needs that little bit of intervention and then it's like
Right.
it can do its thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
cool. So I'd love to talk about, like, parents in regards to, like, the therapy that their kids are going through. So, like, a lot of parents have their own worries, their own self-doubt, and their own stressors. So how is it that their emotions can affect their child's progress? And what is it that kind of helps parents stay grounded as maybe their kids going through EMDR therapy?
That's a good question. Because I think a lot of times as parents, we're just focused on the kid and not ourselves. And we're not focused on, how we react to certain situation really affects
Right.
them. And so no, yeah, I like to use the analogy of like, we're all on the ship. The parents or the caretakers are, steering the ship, and the kids are on the ship, and so they're looking to us to for guidance on how to survive and how to handle things. And so,
Right.
um, so yeah, that a lot of that stuff matters. And kids are just like tiny humans, so they have the same feelings that we do, and they pick up on the same cues that we do.
Right.
And I think again, sometimes that's overlooked because they're just like, oh well, they're just a kid. They probably didn't notice that. And but they do.
Right.
They notice a lot. And so
Yeah.
yeah, if a parent is stressed, if the parent is having doubts about, their kid's capabilities and, how they're going to handle all these and pressures and stresses and all that, the kid's going to pick up on that.
Right.
And so I think that's a really key component because it's like, parents are just like, oh, I need to get my kid help and they got to be okay. And I got to figure this out. But then in the meantime, if they are super stressed to the max and getting frustrated, like, well, I did this and this didn't work. And why isn't I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do and it's not still not working or still not being helpful, then the kid
Right.
is definitely picking up on that. And through that, and of course, like, 99% of parents aren't intentionally trying to harm their kids, but through that, some of those negative beliefs can form of mom's always stressed, and every time we try to sit down and do this, then she gets upset or she gets tense. And so they can pick up on it not only through words but just through like a sigh, or an eye
Yeah.
roll, or oh, here we go again. um
Right.
all of those are conveying messages of, oh, I I can't handle this, or you know, or they can convey the message. Let me put it that way, or I'm not capable, or
Mhm.
even overhearing a comment that they weren't intended to hear. I mean, I can't tell you how many
Right.
times that I've been doing EMDR with adults, and someone's mentioned to me like, "Oh, I have this memory of my mom saying this about me one time." Uh,
Mm.
and it's just like, yeah. And as parents, it's like, yeah, you don't always say the right thing or do the right thing, but being, having that self awareness and that knowledge, and being more attuned, and realizing like your attitude and your own doubts and insecurities are going to affect, your kids. So,
Right.
and then I know you had a second part to that question, so you got to
Yeah.
remind me what.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. Just what is it that helps parents stay grounded? Like maybe that helps redirect them to remind them that their kids are gonna like pick up on
Yeah.
these things?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just first, like just accepting like your kid is who your kid is, like, having that
Right.
unconditional pause, like regard, love for your kid is
Mhm.
so key. Like, of course we love our kids, but like, do you truly love them for who they are, and
Right.
accept that maybe they aren't exactly who, or like what you thought it was going to be like, maybe the expectation's different. Nobody, has kids thinking like, oh, they might have ADHD or a learning challenge,
Right.
right? So we all envision our kids like, meeting the milestones as they're supposed to, and, accomplishing things, throughout their childhood and all that. So I think a big key to that is just really, truly like seeing your kid for who they are, and like believing in their capability,
Right.
and so I think if a parent is having a hard time doing that, like I think there's a difference between like, you're saying the right things, but do you actually believe what you're saying, like telling your kids? So like I think if a parent is really struggling with that, and struggling with like adaptability, and just having that faith, and that patience, then I would really recommend that they kind of seek out, maybe some of their own help to figure out,
Right.
what's blocking that, like why, what's there, for them. A lot of times it's stuff from their own childhood, or some of their unresolved stuff that just hasn't been processed yet,
Yeah.
to take a look at, because it's so important, for parents to be, that person for their child that believes in them, and
Right.
truly thinks that they're capable of anything.
Yeah. That's very important. I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, yeah, just to be able to trust your kid, like, the
Yeah.
capabilities, or the things that they want to achieve might be not be what you expected, but like just allowing them to, yeah, just trust that they're going to turn out to be what they're supposed to be, and it's going to be okay, So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
feel like I've definitely had parents say in the past, like, once they've kind of gathered themselves and realized, like, their kid is going to be whoever their kid is, their kid surprises them in ways they never, ever expected, and, like, in the
Absolutely.
most positive ways, and they're like, "This is so cool, my kid was able to do this," but they had to first believe that that was
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, that adaptability, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is my, like, last question for you, but I think it's a good one. So,
Yeah.
we were talking before today, and you had told me that your kid had their own, like, diagnosis journey.
Mhm.
So as a mom who's been through that, what perspective do you bring to therapy? Like, when you're supporting other families who have, like, something new that they're facing?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my son was diagnosed with a speech disorder at age 3. So he was diagnosed with CAS, which is childhood apraxia speech, and that, like, of course, I don't know, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know any other
Right.
parents that had been through it. So it can be a dark place when you don't have answers, and you
Yeah.
don't know what to expect, and nobody can really give you an exact answer of how this looks like, and how much progress they'll be able to make.
Right.
So, the unknown is scary. And, I think for me, I had to learn to just take it one day at a time. And I also had to learn that I had to believe in his capability, that he is going to get better and he is going to learn. And there are, services out there, to help with that. My husband was much better at just kind of taking it day at a time. And I'm the type that's like, oh my gosh, is this going to affect him
Right.
in 2 years and when he's
Right.
18 and like, and so I really had to scale it back and I really had to trust that, we were doing everything, that we could for him. And just again, like I had to believe in his ability, to learn. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And I actually went back and did my own therapy, because, I didn't want to, I wanted to be more present and attuned, with all of my kids. And
Right.
just, I don't want to be angry at them all the time. And so, just seeking out my own therapy and doing some work there had really helped me to be more present and attuned to them,
Yeah.
which could go so far. Just
Yeah.
again, like believing like that they are capable of everything, that they want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for parents, it's hard. I get it, and it's hard to be patient. It's hard to not
Right.
know, what to expect. But the more that they can, make it about like I need to be okay so that my kid can like get through this struggle or
Right.
overcome these things. It's so important for the parent to be like that grounding, that rock for them, that's stable and secure and ability to calmly problem solve or adapt and say like, okay, this didn't work, but we'll try a different way. And
Yeah.
just being able to be that calm, neutral place and just to have faith that it's
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. It's just one day at a time. So
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that you yourself also went to therapy because you mentioned that earlier that you recommend it to parents who are
mhm.
having a hard time like grounding themselves and reducing their worries so that they can really like help their kid. And like that's just a fantastic example of like you practice what you preach.
Yeah, absolutely. Firm believer in therapy. It's like you can
Yeah.
learn so much. Like, why would you not want to learn more about yourself and
Right.
how to be a better person, a better parent, a better
Right.
partner? So, yeah,
Wow. That's so cool.
yeah.
Ugh, well, thank you. I don't know if you have any like last bits that you want to share with anyone.
No, I mean, I'm always up for discussion. Like, if people just want to reach out to like just have a conversation or ask more questions about EMDR, I'm always happy to be that resource. If you need, any type of resource, it's like if I don't have the answer, then I'm happy to help people that want to find those answers and solutions.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for being here, Kelly. This has been such an interesting topic and I think such an important topic to discuss, not only to like reduce the stigma, but for parents to know that there are so many options in terms of therapy. If
yeah,
traditional talk therapy is not working, they've got a fantastic resource in EMDR or brain spotting.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, thank
that's
you
why
for
I'm
being
here.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.